All right, guys, today's the day. Time's the time. There's laundry going in the background, but I have got to make my garden tour video now while I have a break in the smog and before my garden is a completely different experience from what it's been for the past several months. This is my first garden here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's been an incredible journey getting to hear from March when we completely overhauled this crazy space. It's looking a bit out of control at this point. Look at that beautiful sunflower over here. These looked a little better a couple weeks ago. I'll insert some pictures. There's all this elastic because I had to tie them up for some storms we had. There's just a lot to report on. So let me get started. I'm going to start at the beginning in terms of a walkthrough. There's a lot to share, so hold on. First place I should probably start is in my little nursery. I have this area of the garden that's not planted out. I haven't soil tested here. I'm a little worried about contamination in this soil bed, so until I know for sure that it's safe, I haven't planted there. But this end of the garden gets mostly morning light that comes from over this side. So here I've got some of my what will soon be transplanted in the garden. This is part of what I want to show you before I transplant, because the garden is just going to change so much. This is a variety of different Asian greens from different mizunas, pink and white, tatsoi, which I already have growing, but I'm growing more of because I love it. I have to pronounce that. I gotta look up how to say that. Maybe I can find it here. And a bunch of different kales, right? These, actually, the aphids and things have already swooped in on these, but this is a bunch of little baby kales that I'm excited to have in the garden to join my lacinato. Before I move any further, I have some sage. I have lots of sage all over the garden, all different kinds, blue and hummingbird and etc. But here, this is ashitaba. I'll do a whole little series about having gotten this seed this far. It's been a journey. Started with 30 days of stratification in my fridge, and it's very slow going, but I hope I can get these little plants to larger size. Over here, I just recently transplanted two of my tree collards. You will see several more of them in the tour. This is one of the green varieties, and this is two of the red varieties. These are the runts of the 6 cuttings that I got several months ago, and I'm so glad to see they are coming to life. Even this one, which looks like, oh gosh, it just might not make it, it still could. I haven't given up, but this gives me a lot of hope that this guy is turning around, and that's fabulous. Those over here are some dandelion, like actual flowering dandelion, but I'm going to be growing them for eating. The flowers, the leaves, the roots, all of it. And this is a little succulent that my neighbor gave me. I have no purpose for succulents. I don't understand why people obsess about them. I don't even like them. But someone gives me a plant and it's alive, I want to keep it alive. I have a little baby avocado that hopefully will be the sibling of my much more established avocado that I have ironically tried to kill twice. I'll tell the story because it's currently doing quite well, and I want to share with you my journey in having almost killed it 2 times, like I said. These are some geraniums, and this is sort of my area for where I try to get some cuttings going. Aren't these gorgeous? I hope I get to have these in my garden. These grow pretty wild all over San Francisco, so when I see a plant that has a lot of leaves going, like, see this little new leaf growth going? Yay, we will be doing some of this. All right, moving on. Next place I want to show you is another sort of subtle spot, and this is my shady weed garden. This is quelites, or lamb's quarters, and stellaria, or chickweed, so some edible weeds. I'm growing them back here because especially the stellaria is known to be pretty invasive, and I don't want it to have a lot of advantage of tons of optimal sun. So here, it only gets about 2 hours or 2 or 3 hours of direct sun a day. The rest is just indirect, and it's doing quite well. It was a very slow start, but I'm looking forward to eating this. I'm hoping that this garden back here will provide me some edibles, but just some things that grow reasonably well in the shade to make use of this little strip of area. This is buckwheat. I will show you pictures of when it was really lush. It's gone to seed. It has these very cool sort of pyramid-shaped seeds that then dry. And this looks, if you've ever grown buckwheat microgreens, you get these in your shipping, right? This is the seed you purchase. And unfortunately, the larger leaves are supposedly not so good for us to eat, whereas we can eat the microgreens, so that's unfortunate. But this is a great ground cover plant, and it's just been nice to have some more small flowers back in this area. This beast, I don't even know what this is. Someone tell me what this is. I have it all over my garden. I don't know what it is, but I'm just hoping, I've just given it long enough that hopefully it will flower for me soon so that it does something for me. Otherwise, it's just a huge weed. I don't know what it is. I thought it was something that I had planted because it was growing in so many consistent places, but I'm not even really sure because I don't recognize it by smell, by taste, by anything. Back here I have some more of the sage I was telling you about. I have a few different specimens of this gorgeous blue. This one doesn't look so hot, but at least it's got a flower on it. Back here, the other weeds, quote unquote, they're going, are mostly chicory family. So I've got frisee and green chicory and red Harding radicchio. There's arugula, parsley, and this is another of my tree collards. So this is, if you can believe it, this was the runner-up of the robust red tree collard starts that I had. This one was the smaller of the two that I transplanted originally, and it has just gone crazy, probably because it doesn't have a lot of competition for nutrients back here. I need to do a whole series about tree collards. I think they're incredible. I think if you're doing backyard food gardening, you have to have some, or at least one. I just think they're the workhorses. They're intended to be the workhorses of my gardening. That's why I have so many of them. I'm going to show you from the other side, but this is tomatillos who've just totally taken over. And let's work around the other side. I say they've taken over because I have tomatillos everywhere, and I did not mean to have them everywhere. I didn't recognize what they were, and they kept getting transplanted, and thank goodness the bees enjoy them, so that even if they don't actually produce fruit, they will have served a purpose with the real estate that they occupy. Starting here, though, I have the first of several tomatoes I will show you. There's also basil and parsley under there. I've got herbs tucked in everywhere I can. We're not going to get to see everything that's out here, I feel. But the moral of the story is all of the tomatoes I have, and I have about 35 plants, having never grown a single tomato previously. And by the way, that is the same variety. These plants, these tomatoes, and these tomatoes came from the same seeds. And I'm guessing it's because it was a hybrid variety and not an heirloom. They all started with some cherry tomatoes that I just, they had sort of gone off in the package I've had. I cut them in quarters, dried them in the sun, threw them in the ground, and they took off, and I just kept transplanting them. And now that's the class of 2020 cherry tomatoes. Is that line that you see out there? We'll get there in a second. But that's who all of these guys are. My beautiful marigolds. People go bonkers for sunflowers, but these marigolds just smell like honey. They're so prolific. They're this strong, incredible plant. It took such an effort to get these even past this big because they kept getting eaten by earwigs and who knows whatever else in the middle of the night. And I'm so excited to see them just going nuts, sending off more and more blooms. I just adore them. There's also a variety, all the flowers you see in this area, including I'll show you, I'll insert a picture of this handsome sunflower very soon. Poor thing. I'm not cutting, I should be deadheading, but I'm not as much as I was, because I really want to let the flowers dry for the birds to be able to enjoy the seeds. Aesthetically, though, I hate seeing my poor flowers just droop like this, but I'm going to just keep watering this pot, and hopefully these other younger flowers will open. This whole thing is in a very small planter, sort of. See, now I'll have to insert pictures of how beautiful these looked originally, but they're just in a very small pot, and they don't have enough nutrients in here or enough water capacity for this, but I didn't know what was going to come out. These were just a mixed variety. I believe this is like the fairy blend or the pollinator blend from Botanical Interests. Before I go further, here's some red clover that I planted. I specifically purchased red clover because it is just gorgeous. I love it so much, and I want some more legumes for my compost and for just nitrogen enrichment in my soil. When I say my compost, I mean so when this dies, I will compost it and get all the good nitrogen. This little guy back here, let's just acknowledge, this is a moringa tree that I purchased from a farm in Florida before I found moringa seeds, and it, has been through it. It has basically died several times, except it is green. I don't know if you can see that stem is really green. And when I originally put it from its original place where I thought it was dead to this pot, it had a pretty substantial root system. So I'm just going to see if one day leaves pop out of this thing, and I'm going to keep it happy as I can in the meantime. So anyway, back to my flowers. These all come from two different seed packs from Botanical Interests. I didn't know what to expect other than they had, an approximation of their sun requirements, but I just love this. And it looked even fresher and brighter a couple weeks ago, but it's taken me this time to make the video. I have lots of Tulsi basil. This is cardinal basil. California poppies that I just deadheaded, unfortunately, but they have been incredible. I'm sort of doing an experiment to see. I think I should probably cut them back pretty heavily at this point because I've got new growth and old growth, but I've also got new growth on top of old growth, so I haven't made a full decision as to whether I'm going to cut it back but the time is coming. A few different things have had to be cut back that I started with in the garden, and that's why I'm like, I have to make this video before that happens with everything. So there's my gorgeous, these tomatoes were sort of the oldest, most mature version of the ones that I originally transplanted, and they are just bonkers. It's 3 different plants here, plus one that's in the ground. You don't see as much of a difference anymore, but originally these leaves were a lot darker. They might need food. And the one that had been in the ground and was not transplanted, which I think is this one, was a lot lighter. Now they all seem to have about the same color leaves, but that could be because of the nutrients that these originally were really sponging on, and now maybe they've dissipated enough of the nutrients that they're no longer enhanced. But that was something I was really paying attention to at the beginning, and I probably have a video about it. Here's another tree collard buried in here. Now this one was originally the biggest specimen I had. It has a nice bifurcated trunk already. It was the biggest one I had from the cuttings I purchased. Again, I'll do an entire video just about tree collards, but it is buried in there. And I think, I've taken off dinosaur-sized leaves, just like from this one I showed you a minute ago. It has no big leaves on it now because I've harvested. I mean, they're big leaves, but not as big as they've gotten. They've been just incredible, massive, massive leaves. But this one's now growing less of those, and I think it's because it's sun compromised, but it's also probably nutrition compromised. It's got a lot of competition. So again, I grow for a lot of leafy greens. It's what I like to eat, and so I've got more frisee and radicchio. The next round will be more of the Asian greens, and some other things that I want to enjoy, so more kales, for example, which we'll get to. But just notice I've got a ton of what I'm calling non-lettuce edible greens, and they're keeping me very happy. This plant is actually a, what do you call it? Ground cherry. This is a ground cherry that I snagged from a neighbor's plant. It's not in the neighbor's yard. It's just on the street and is growing like in the cracks. But I was like, oh my God, that's ground cherry. I don't even know if they know it's ground cherry. I think they just have it as an ornamental in their landscape. It wasn't even a ripe fruit, and it gave me so many sprouts. So these look gorgeous. I will hopefully see if I can get it to grow here. I'm excited. This is wormwood. I have this growing elsewhere as well. Look, the ground cherry even contaminated the wormwood. I don't know how it's possible. It's just the most prolific little guy ever, and I thought it would want more heat, but it seems very happy. In here, there's a great big turnip. It might be rutabaga, because a lot of the seeds I'm growing are from my sprouting seeds. You would sprout from microgreens and the like, and so they're a little bit random in what I'm getting. Here again are my beautiful tomatillos. They are extremely ornamental and gorgeous. And more than anything, I don't need, I love tomatillos, and I would love to make some chile verde, but I'm not counting on a huge harvest of tomatillos or tomatoes for that matter. I might have to learn to eat a lot of green tomatoes because it's 60 degrees here, and we've had very little warm weather this summer in San Francisco, but at least in my neighborhood. But I will say this has been great for the pollinators. They just go nuts over these flowers, so it's all good. Moving on, this is my Okinawa spinach. It's one of 2 what we call spinach, but isn't actually a spinach. An edible ornamental. This plant needs to come out of this pot. It needed to come out of this pot weeks ago, but it is waiting for a good location. So right now, it's like a fish that's needing to outgrow its bowl. I feel so bad that it's in here because it's trying its hardest to be healthy, and it is healthy, but it wants to go nuts, and I want to let it because I want to eat more of it. It's a really incredible plant. I will be doing, again, another video about Okinawa spinach. I got this as a teeny little start. I'll insert some baby pictures when I make the proper video about this plant. And it is just really doing well. I think I'm going to put it where these tomatillos are because this is a nice deep bed, and I have a feeling it wants nice deep roots, and I want to let it really spread out. And it's such a prolific edible plant that I want to make sure it has a prime location, and it seems to like the light here. So I'm waiting to have to pull out those tomatillos, and this will hopefully be the spot where the spinach goes. This is a barrel of onions. There's an onion experiment going on here. All of these larger greens are from green onions that I ate, bought at the store and ate, and then just saved the last inch of the white bulb and transplanted. The little teeny ones are onions I grew from seed. They grow very finically from seed, but we're just doing a little side by side. Some of them are actually pretty strong. That's looking good. We'll see how they do, and hopefully one day I'll get onions, or at least onion flowers, in this pot. I have back here anise hyssop, which is intoxicatingly sweet smelling and tasting. It's really here for the pollinators. They love these flowers. I need to deadhead some more of this, but this plant literally I got as a teeny start, and it just took off. It could not be happier. It's looking a little sadder now, but it's been here since March, and it's still giving me lots of new flowers. I just need to deadhead it a little more, but I wish I used it more. It's so sweet. I almost can't use it. I almost don't even like the taste because it's just so sweet. All right, under here, before we talk about the big cabbage elephants in the room, I've got some beans that are a second round of plant. We're going to talk about beans in a minute. I've had a really tough time growing them, not because they don't grow here, because they do, even though it's colder than they would like at the time. They are being attacked by a really obnoxious pest in my garden. So these probably don't have too long before the pest finds them, and in the meantime, I'm just letting them grow. We'll talk more soon. More dandelion and chicory, etc., more greens filling in the space that I harvest from every day. There's a strip of multi-sown turnips / rutabagas down here. They're starting to look a little powdery mildewed, which happens in this particular area. I had, and I'll show a picture of a beautiful wall of peas. There were pea flowers where the tomatoes are, and there were gorgeous pea flowers right here. And it breaks my heart, but they got severely mildewed, and then in trying to save the plants, I think I burned them and trying to get rid of the mildew. It was really heartbreaking. The flowers were beautiful. The peas were delightfully sweet. They grew magnificently, and I really miss them. But lessons learned. There's been a lot of lessons in this process. My cabbages, isn't this just like a perfect flower of cabbage? I just love it. Both of these are doing really well. They seem to like it here. I probably will eat them before they completely ball up into a tight head because they have had plenty of aphids on them, and I don't really feel like trapping the aphids in the tighter head of cabbage, like just me. I'm planning on harvesting them very soon. I have been reluctant to harvest that much because, speaking of aphids, I tend to have a lot of, I think it's called like mummies, when the aphids are inoculated with a parasitic wasp. And so I haven't wanted to pull off those leaves and instead just sort of leave those leaves around so that the parasitic wasps hatch in the garden and I don't just wash them down to drain, because those are critical predator insects to help me in my fight against aphids. But I am looking forward to harvesting these, and I may eat them fresh. The leaves are delicious. Like, don't get me wrong. I wish I were eating these more. And in the future, if I grow heading cabbage, I will probably not let it head, and I'll just keep harvesting the outer leaves before they get this big, maybe around this size, because they make great wrap leaves. They're delicious, they're soft, they're succulent, they're very nutritious. Look at all the gorgeous biofilm on this. I love it. But I'm just letting this do its thing, and I'm probably going to turn these into a ferment. I have a purple cabbage ferment that I made from store-bought cabbage, and I'm ready to make my own out of my yard as soon as I can harvest this. All right, I have some more transplanted geraniums from the neighborhood down here. This is supposed to be a poppy, but I think it's a weed that I transplanted mistakenly that sort of duped me into thinking it was the poppy. This here, I don't know if it'll ever grow, but it's actually purple. Is it Pyrethrum daisy? I really hope it grows. I want some insecticidal flowers in my garden, for unhelpful insects, that is. And I just think it's a beautiful flower, so they're super slow growing, like painfully slow growing. Back here I have blanket flower. Oh, there is a blossom. It's being hidden by this cabbage. It's like, can you please harvest the cabbage already? I will. I have this growing in a few other parts of my garden. It wants more sun than it's getting right here, thanks to the cabbage. But I'm going to put it around this dried up buckwheat, which you see, interestingly, I wanted to observe, this buckwheat did not do, it's seeded, and that's not the problem, but the plant in more shade did much better than the plant here or another part of my garden. I also just want to show, I have arugula that I've let flower. I just constantly am growing arugula for its flowers. It grows so fast, it grows very predictably, and then I can have nice pollinator-friendly flowers that are also edible, and I will eat this very soon. But people say it's like more bitter when it's bolted, but I don't really notice, and the flowers are so sweet tasting, and the leaves all on the stalk are so just perfect bitter greens. It's all about your palate. For me, it's delicious. I have several borage plants in the yard. I will show you many of them. I love this. I just love this flower. Just gorgeous. I have this, I forgot what it's called, something blossom, I don't remember what it's called, but I just think this color is incredible, and it is so prolific. I'm constantly deadheading it, and it just can't keep up. It's a monster. This is a single plant, by the way. Single plant. And these buds just keep coming. I adore it. Adore it. Like I said, I'll show you in a second. I have a dark burgundy version as well, but this is the original one that stole my heart. Back here I have one of the only 2 tomatoes that I purchased. I purchased from Annie's nursery early in the season. Now, this plant I will have to do another full in-depth lessons I've learned in the garden series on. The plant's going crazy. I mean, the plant is trying to, grow all the way out to the neighborhood. It's incredible. It has very few leaves on it. It does not have enough leaves on it. And part of that is because when I originally was growing it, I thought I was doing the right thing by cutting off the suckers. It is a golden something cherry tomato. Every tomato video you watch on YouTube, they tell you trim the suckers, keep the suckers off, blah, blah, blah. Nope, not with cherry tomatoes. And I didn't learn that until it was too late for this, because for whatever reason, they just don't mention that very often. So I've been keeping up with the ripening tomatoes on the inside, especially because rats are starting to get to them. But it's got a ridiculous amount of fruit on it, given its sparse leaves. It's also having a hard time because there's one example. The leaves are, I don't know if it's a blight, but the leaves are dying. And so it has even fewer leaves than I wish I could leave on it, because once they start to suck more energy from the plant than they contribute, I do cut them off. So, it's that time of season. I'm very, very, very concerned that I should just cut this plant back so that it doesn't keep growing and then it focuses on ripening the fruit it has. I'm still thinking I'm going to do that, but I wanted to make this video before I did. But yeah, this is a monster, and I absolutely love this plant. Next year, it's a hybrid, I think, so I can't save the seeds, but I will get this plant again. I will get this variety again, because it is just so vigorous, and these tomatoes are so sweet. The first one I tried, I honestly, tears came to my eyes because I could not believe I grew something so delicious. It was so exciting. So I will grow it again, and I'll grow it differently so that it's a happier, healthier plant. But in the meantime, it's just been so generous with me. More flowers from the original flower mix. My comfrey, my beloved comfrey that I also got along with my tree collards as a small cutting. I've cut this back several times. For whatever reason, it just loves this little corner. It doesn't even get that much sun here. It has not yet flowered. I'm looking forward to flowers. But in the meantime, it gives me lots of compost. I mean, I have it sort of in the permacultural practice idea of having the leaves for a compost, or for a soil enrichment. So I'm really excited that it does as well as it does here, and I just have to make sure the caterpillars don't go too crazy on it. This is a mystery flower. It looks like it might want to be a sunflower, but I don't know what it's going to be. I've had so many things in this one little area that I don't even know what that is anymore. I transplanted this, and actually what I originally transplanted were tomatillos. Like I told you, they're everywhere in my garden, and then I was like, no, you can't stay, but this I'm going to leave because I don't know what this is. This is a row of red amaranth, absolutely spectacular. It's growing better here than anywhere else in my garden, although I have it one of the nice things about my garden is that I have microclimates here that give me a chance to see what grows best where. So this has been the preferred spot for the amaranth. I eat these leaves. Something is bothering them. Something is sort of attacking them. I don't see an insect, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what the leaf curl is, but it might be nutritional. But I am overdue to harvest some of the bigger leaves. But I'm just sort of honestly, the garden's gotten away from me at this point. I'm just sort of letting it do its thing. But I absolutely eat those leaves, and I'm hoping to just let these seeds fall, let the birds enjoy them, kind of like the sunflowers. And in the meantime, I think they're gorgeous. So fun with that. This is new radishes. I've got watermelon and I think China rose and a red globe radish under here. Also, this is one of the tree collards I originally purchased when I didn't think I was going to be able to get cuttings. Cuttings were sold out when I originally was looking, so I purchased one, but notice I purchased this as a little start, and it is much less healthy, robust, stunted, a little bit more stunted than the ones I got as cuttings. And it has a lot more sun here, so interesting, just making that observation. What you see over there, we'll see this again, is the second of the tomatoes that I purchased. I believe it's a dwarf heirloom of some kind. I'm shocked that it has built those beautiful tomatoes for me. It looks a little rough right now because it got attacked by some raccoons. I will show you in a video, and we're going to see the damage to some of the tomatoes. They got the first ripest one. Oh, hello, little bird. Thank you for visiting. I'm so glad you're here to be in the video. But I love that plant. It's just gorgeous. We'll talk in a minute. Here, I have to do a whole little series about this tulle mesh protective habitat. I've done a lot of harvesting in here in the past couple days, and I'm not going to open the hood and get under there for a clear visual, but mostly this is chard and beets. It was originally designed for chard and beets to keep this leaf miner awful insect off of them, because I learned that in this climate, this is the summer is the most pronounced time of year as a problem for that pest. Most of the rest of the year you don't need to worry too much, but I put them under this to see if I could protect them, and I will follow up with a whole video about this tooling and whether or not it's been effective for cabbage loopers and the particular leaf mining fly that was a problem for my chard and beets. And also you'll see beans under there, and they're starting to get a little pale and struggle, but they are making beans for me. Those are the healthiest beans I've grown this year, and it's because they're protected. So it is a success, although, you know, with some caveats. My dog is like, this video is really boring and long. Good boy. All right, row of lacinato kale. This I sewed very tight. This was with a I really just sewed like a wild animal and just put these in here really tight, and I've been thinning them, but they're a little bit stunted for that reason, that they were competing for a lot of nutrients, and they are in soil that is my original soil that was robbing nitrogen for my plants. I have to do a whole video about that as well. But I love these. I harvest a ton off of them. So even though they're densely packed, this makes plenty of food. So note to self, you do not have to be crazy with the spacing with your kale. You'll still get a lot of growth, a lot of development. These also look a little rough because I just BT'd them again last night, but the cabbage loopers have been on assault. But one of the things I love about this is that you get this, in this particular seeds, I have sort of the red vein and the green stem all in one, and it's just, I love this little section. It gives me a lot of food. I have new upcoming cilantro down here, more multi-sown turnips / rutabaga. I say that because they're labeled turnips, but then they grow and they seem to taste and look more like a rutabaga to me. That's the only reason. There's some herbs in there. I believe that is, bee balm. That is bee balm. Here I've got more radicchio and frisee. Here where it gets more sun, you see the redder leaves and a flatter development of these plants. So interesting, they're all the same. I have tatsoi that has long since overgrown. I previously had bok choy that overgrew the same way, and I let it bolt and I ate it and enjoyed the whole thing down to the last wire, pulled off all those little baby leaves. But in the meantime, I get amazing brassica flowers for my pollinators, so I just leave it until the flowers are no longer useful to them. What else used to be here? Red mustard. In this little row right here, I had red mustard. It also bolted like really quickly for whatever reason. And I just let it. I kept eating it, and I pulled it out pretty recently because I need to make room for some baby plant transplants that are coming out soon. This is going to be their new home. It also has just cast cilantro seeds in here because I can never get enough cilantro plants. And yeah, I eat it so fast, I need a lot of it growing. I have several Brussels sprouts growing in my garden. So this is one. There's a second. I have probably the happiest one I have is right in there in the mix. This is like a brassica field right here. But anyway, that is also a Brussels sprout. I'm really excited. I will be following them closely for as they develop. They take some time, but you know, Brussels sprouts are one of those things that are really, for me, too expensive to justify buying when nutritionally they're not that much more exciting than cabbage. Oh, hold everything. Look at that, guys. Yeah. I don't know if you could see those, just like little eggs that had just hatched into something that was probably going to be a flying insect that I don't think was helpful, because it was also eating, I think they were eating through my leaf there, so I don't know what they were. I try to not kill eggs until I know the insect is unhelpful, but sometimes my maternal instinct kicks on and I'm like, get rid of it. The only eggs I know not to kill are ladybug eggs, because I made that mistake once and I smeared the eggs before I looked up the bright yellow ones. I was like, oh shoot. Okay, so back to radishes. Those are bolted radishes. Radish, like arugula, I always want to have some, and I always want to have them bolting. They're another green that I grow instead of lettuce for the foliage, just to eat in salads. They also make great ferment accelerators. The pods from the radishes are fabulous in ferments, in carrots, with anything else you want to ferment. But I've specifically done carrots and just love it because they add some brassica kick to the fermented sweet carrots. And that's in terms of the rapidity with which it ferments, but also flavor. So plus you get bonus flowers very readily. All right, final tree colored specimen. This is the other of the ones that I bought as a seedling, and it really is pretty massive and is taken off. But I will say, you know, the leaves are smaller. It's not that much more thriving than the ones I got from stock. So I think with stock is the way to go, or with cutting is the way to go, but it's a fabulous plant, and I love how dark purple these are. On the note of the color, here's the more mature of my green varieties. I got cuttings of green and red. I will say, flavor-wise, I prefer the red. I prefer the green. It's softer, it's sweeter. I'm not gonna lie. But nutritionally, I do want the anthocyanins, so I make sure I eat a lot of the red, of course. Why wouldn't I eat it? It's from my garden, and you can always cook it, or that might kill some of the anthocyanins, but or the polyphenols in general. But it makes great wraps, it makes great salad, and I devour it. Lots of lacinato kale. I just try to keep harvesting. They've gotten a little pale recently, and I think it's because they're just competing for nutrients in here. So I gave them a little boost of nitrogen last night, and hopefully that will help them bounce back. We will talk about the way I supplement nitrogen in my garden in another video. Here I have red orache. I have it orach. It's growing in several places, and I'm looking forward to it flowering. I don't get that much food off of this, but as I've begun to trim it back so that it will bush out more, I'm definitely appreciating the plant more. But I just think it's gorgeous. It's fabulous. And when you're not looking at the caterpillar injured leaves, it's just a gorgeous plant. And it's very delicious. It has a sweet spinach, sort of minerally saltiness to it, salty sweet. It's great. I love that plant. It wants more sun. It desperately wants more sun. It is one of the only plants in my garden, which is very leafy green heavy, as you can see, that no matter how much sun or how hot it's ever been able to get here in San Francisco, those leaves they never wilt. They're always aiming straight at the sun, like, give me more. Next to it, I have dill that has bolted into flowers. Good, I want those flowers. And over here, I have some more. I'll just show you that I've let go completely to seed. And I'm looking forward to harvesting the dill seeds. They'll probably end up in a ferment. Here are some marigolds that finally have given me pods and flowers. I just think they're gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. More basil. This is actually doing really well over here, and it doesn't even get that much sun. Note to growers. This is that other blanket flower I was telling you. I cannot wait till she opens. Dandelions, which I've learned, I think, prefer shade to full sun. It doesn't get a lot of sun up here, and these look better than elsewhere. So, yes. We're going to talk about beans. I'm going to do a whole video on beans. I'm letting this scarlet runner just go nuts. This actually is still a really healthy plant, which is surprising given the start that this plant and this plant had. Look, there's another really fat pod bean down there. I'm just letting them go to seed. I haven't been harvesting very many beans. It just doesn't make enough beans for me in the heat we have not had, but I want to see some crazy intense purple scarlet runners come out of my garden if I can. So I'm just going to leave those on there. And I'm not asking this plant to produce anymore. I'm like, you did your thing. You grew. You fended yourself off from the pests. And I fended you off from the pests. It was a real struggle with this little plant. From the beginning, it was like really, really brutalized by insects at night. Like these. These looked originally gorgeous, and they would have looked like this plant, but for the insects that I was telling you they just devastate beans. So it probably just isn't going to be something I'm going to grow in my garden. I originally just wanted the scarlet runners mostly for the flowers for the hummingbirds anyway, but it's just, I don't really believe in plant abuse, so we're not going to do it again. You see here another bean specimen, and that is a purple bean from another gorgeous plant. From a gorgeous plant that I'll show you on the other side that I can see it's like mostly dying, but I'll insert pictures of how beautiful it was when it was healthy before the parasite, before the predator insects. What's the word I'm looking for? The pest found it. These are cosmos I grew from seed. I will have another video about my cosmos. This has its first, maybe will open blossom. I have a bigger one on the other side that's helping me shade my lemon tree right there, but it doesn't have any blossoms on it yet. And it gets more sun, so I don't understand that, but I love it. It's healthy, and I'm excited. Trellising spaghetti squash, guys. Now, it looks a mess. The powdery mildew has kicked in. I'll be showing more videos about this plant that'll show you when it looked beaming and glowing and beautiful. But in the meantime, I've cut a lot of immature spaghetti squash off of this and eaten them at all stages. There's one that's hanging that's pretty ripe, and I have some on the other side of the garden that are just monstrous. They're like twice that size. And I'm trying to let them ripen on the vine, but I'm also just kind of ready for this plant to not be here because it's not looking great. But I'm going to let it run its course, and I'm going to harvest everything I can off of it. They have been incredibly prolific. They've been so fun to trellis. Like, it's been so patient with me figuring out where the heck to grow it. It has, you know, doesn't have that much fruit or squash on it right now because I just harvest it a lot. But it has done incredibly well given we have had not its favorite climate, so it just has not been warm enough. Yay, this pericon has shown me some flowers. This is Mexican tarragon. I'll show you elsewhere in the yard, but here it's already starting to show some flowers. And I'm saying it like that because this one gets very little sun. You can see it's reaching for the sun, and I feel guilty about that. I'm going to show you the one that gets more sun, and you'll see how many flowers and how beautiful they are. I love those. This is a bed of cilantro and some Egyptian spinach, which I'm also growing in several places, trying to get this plant to grow in my garden. I would love to eat this plant one day. And here's some more of the ground cherries, but these are not growing as well as the ones in the little pot, so they need more sun. This area, strangely, it gets the last hours of sun of the day, so it gets hot when, well, relatively speaking, it gets hot sun. It gets hot red light sun, but very few hours. And it doesn't get morning sun, and it's a strange place for things to grow. So this is an experimental corner. For example, the buckwheat, look at this. This buckwheat was big when I transplanted it compared to the other starts that I showed you down at the other end of the yard, and it has been by far the plant to struggle the most, and it's arguably gotten the warmest red sun. More flowers, more poppies that I keep deadheading. I'll show you, I'll have to do a video about how to deadhead poppies, because at first I wasn't sure. I didn't know what to look for, but that's a spent flower. This is a new coming flower. So that's the one I want to deadhead, and this one I want to let grow. Anyway, I love my poppies. Moving on. This is a transplanted Meyer lemon that came from Soto's garden, and it is covered with lemons and new flowers, and it just makes me so happy to see, because when it first got here, it was struggling. At one point, it had an ant infestation and an aphid scale infestation, and it's really just doing beautifully. It was also getting very sunburned, which is part of why I put that cosmos flower on that side of it, to help shade it naturally instead of using shade cloth, which I was originally attempting. But I'm really excited to see it doesn't have the neon yellow leaves it once had, and it looks more comfortable. So I just am really excited about that. Speaking of my pollinators and my borage, I have borage everywhere for exactly this reason. I also love the smell and taste of borage. It's got that watermelon-y essence to it, but I have to admit I haven't been making much borage tea or anything. It just goes to the compost once they're spent completely. I would like to get the seeds out of there. Borage seeds are extremely nutritious, kind of like evening primrose, right, for the oil. I'll have to look at what to do with it, because I certainly do have a lot of them, and I hate to waste. But in the meantime, they're just here for the pollinators. More flowers, including the very first zinnias to make it. I'll have to do a whole video about the struggle with getting zinnias to grow in my garden. We'll talk, but yeah, I'm excited to have those here. I also have more different kinds of marigolds that just really tickle me. I love marigolds. There's a whole story about this little plant. It was basically dead, and out of laziness, I left it and didn't touch it, and it came back to life, and it has been this most prolific little plant. Look at how many buds it has on it. I just deadheaded it for the first time today. It has, and it's got even more. Incredible. Don't give up on your plants. It's just incredible. Lots of cocozelle squash. Now, these are sick squash. These are not happy. I'm going to show you my happy squash, but we'll take a good long look. They have bamboo next to them because I thought I might have trellised them like people can do with zucchini, but this variety just is not really trellisable. At least I can't figure out how to trellis it and keep it happy. So I just cut off a ton of leaves because they were all yellow. These are the greener of the leaves that it has. So this plant is not doing well. Part of it is the mold or the mildew. There's just something else going on. Nutritionally, I can't keep it happy, and I don't know why, because I'm doing the same thing here as in other places, so I don't know. More Egyptian spinach. I will do another video about this plant, but these are my little adolescent transplants. This is a chile loco that finally has some flowers that might open. It's a chili pepper plant from Soto in his house in Pueblo, Mexico. These are hibiscus manihot. I ordered one of these from Florida along with my poor, oh gosh, now I just totally blanked on the name of the tree, but anyway, it'll come to me. And it died, and I could not bring it back to life. And then I finally found seeds, and it took a really long time, but these seeds I'm so proud of. Now, just recently I transplanted them, and some of the leaves have started to yellow, and I don't know why. It's made me sad. This is the one I transplanted the longest ago, and it still looks great. I don't know why some of these are yellowing. I don't think I gave it too much food, because the food I give is very low intensity, and it's got new growth that's nice and dark, so I don't know what to make of that. It makes me unhappy, though, because it didn't have those yellow leaves before, and I don't like to see that stress, but we're just going to roll with it. I'm just happy it's in a bigger pot than it was, and that they're growing. Like, I am really excited about this plant. I hope one day, I might get flowers. Oh, yes, please, please, please. I want flowers on this so bad. I want to see those beautiful hibiscus flowers, and I want to eat those big, juicy, dinosaur-looking leaves. All right, let's circle around. We're going to talk about tomatoes in just a second. But first, this has taken me so long, but this is a hummingbird sage. And I cannot wait to see the flowers on this, and I can't wait for it to be growing under my oak tree, which has been here for 20-something years, because supposedly it doesn't mind that. It might never get there because it might not get enough sun there, but I cannot wait to see the flowers on this, and I'm just so happy to see it. Here's a sort of a herb garden. I've got marjoram and thyme and oregano that's going crazy. I'm so excited to see that. And basil. This is more opal basil. This is more bee balm that is actually really doing well here, so that might have to come out of that pot soon. Jeez Louise. It was a really small, tiny plant when I put it in there. Here are peppers. This is a bell pepper that's from seed. And I believe these are either chili locos or these could be serranos, but I'm not positive. There's my first open flower. Behind us here, more things I'm going to have to do a whole video on. That is an acerola cherry baby tree that now is not getting enough sun, but hey, it got jump-started into growing because it has to fight for some light now. There's another one over here. They each have separate stories of how they tried to die, and I haven't let them, and I'm excited. There's also more things under here, more amaranth. It's just, we're a mess, but I'm excited. This is a barrel of sweet potatoes. There are 2 different kinds in here. Oh, excuse me while I work around my tomatoes. 2 different kinds in here that I've grew from, not slips, but potatoes I brought at the store, and rather than transitioning them to slips, I just stuck them in the ground, having sprouted them in jars. A video will be focused on that. I eat the leaves, but I don't like to pick just one leaf at a time. I'm waiting to sort of harvest bigger vines. This had a flower for like a day. One of these had a flower for like a day, and I was really excited. But I don't think it's really getting hot enough for them to make sweet potatoes underground. I'm growing them mostly for the leaves because I just think it's so cool that you can eat such a beautiful ornamental. I mean, just gorgeous. I'll have to do a whole series about plants I have in my garden that would make amazing undercover edibles for your ornamental landscape in your garden that you can't plant vegetables in. Back here I have mint, that's spearmint. I also have peppermint on the other side that I didn't show you. It looks a lot happier now that it's sort of getting shaded. When it's in full sun, they tell you mint wants full sun. I read that mint wants full sun. When my mint gets full sun, it just gets dry and gross. This looks nice and yummy. Back to my beautiful cosmos. It's just an amazing tree, but no buds or flowers yet. We'll see what we go. Here is a wild strawberry that is just bonkers, like absolutely cartoonishly bonkers with its prolific output. It doesn't make very sweet strawberries, gotta be honest, but they're perfect, and I eat them like crazy. I eat them just to show appreciation for this plant and how hard she works. Like, good God. More spaghetti squash, parsley, basil, lemon. Under here, let's just show you here's my poor purple beans. This is actually butternut squash. Now, she lost her first squash. That's unfortunate, and I believe that did get pollinated, but the squash did not survive. Oh, maybe this one will. Maybe not. The flower doesn't look that healthy, but we'll see. What I'm excited about, aside from what I'm not excited about, which is more powdery mildew, is that this plant was a really late bloomer. Like, I will show you, I almost uprooted this thing that it wasn't growing, and now I've got lots of flowers. I have to come out here and do some work. We've had such bad air quality that I'm just really behind on my gardening, but because this needs to be cleaned up a bit. But I'm just excited that I know, and like these I have this crazy fly infestation on my squash. I don't know what it's about. But these are beautiful leaves, and if they weren't mildewy, I might even eat some of these leaves, because apparently you can eat squash leaves, but the spaghetti squash, even before it was mildewy, is way too sandpaper. I tried, I did not like it, and I can eat a lot of greens, but I did not enjoy it. Here is my healthy cocozelle, and she is gone crazy. She's got lots of squash all over, like just impossible to harvest, actually. So, note to self, I need to be careful about how I create access. And, some of these squash definitely are molding at the top, and I don't know if that's because the flower stays on too. Maybe I should be taking the flowers off. I don't know. But I do notice I sometimes get those mildewy ones. I still harvest them and eat them and just chop off the mildewy part. I've got some more chicory family stuff. I can't even remember what this is. I think this could be what's it called? Black cumin. Because I have black cumin growing because for the flowers. Am I still recording? Yes. Hopefully still recording. Sorry guys, low battery message. But I believe this is black cumin. I hope it's black cumin because I want to get black cumin flowers. They are gorgeous. This is a culinary version of dandelion that I will talk more about in another video showing them side by side. Here's a better example of my beautiful blue sage and a regular dandelion as opposed to the culinary. This is a, oh my gosh, blanking on the name, brassica, you guys know what that is. But anyway, I had several, but they were getting pretty destroyed, and I just left this one to grow. Here's the spaghetti squash I was telling you about. I mean, just like monstrous. And it's finally turning yellow, which is great because hopefully that means I'll be able to harvest and I'll get to pull this poor plant out of the ground soon because it's just been in here a long time and it's a little bit worse for the wear at this point. There's dill and caraway both in this area, but let's move through the video a little faster. I got flowers. This is some cauliflower and Asian greens. I will do more detailed when I transplant. This is my poor baby avocado that did not come in an Amazon box, but is being shaded because her trunk was being sunburned on this side. So that's set up so that she's getting less burned. We will talk yarrow, and I love that this is bicolor yarrow, apparently. Got pink and white flowers growing out of there. Love her. I did some transplanting earlier today of gojis that I grew from seed from a dried fruit that I bought at the health food store. Here are some other plants that need to be transplanted. As you can see, more herbs, flowers. This is more arugula that I'm using as ground cover and for flowers. This is a borage that turns into a total Medusa. I harvested all of that, just cut it way back recently. This is another basil I have. This is lemon basil. I think it's called Mrs. Burns lemon basil. It smells and tastes amazing. I love it. Love it. Can't even keep up with it. And great story about this plant. She was almost dead and she totally bounced back, and I need to transplant her because she deserves to not be in a pot. I'm thinking she might get this spot once I harvest that cabbage for the aforementioned sauerkraut I'm going to grow. And once I'm just going to harvest these. And this is that plant again, the same stupid plant. I don't know what it is. I shouldn't call it a stupid plant. I'm grateful that it grows here, but I wish I knew what it was. And I wish it would make flowers if it was going to be here. Here's my most robust Egyptian spinach to date. It's been the slowest growing, just painful to watch kind of thing, but it is growing. It's getting a little beat up, but hopefully one day I'll eat something from it. I'm most excited to grow the pods, which apparently you can eat kind of like okra. And here in San Francisco, I cannot grow okra. Like, let's not pretend. I'm struggling with tomatoes. I cannot grow hot weather stuff. And this would prefer heat, I'm pretty sure. But in the meantime, I'm just going to be patient with it as long as she keeps growing. I've got lamb's quarters here, which are being attacked by something. I need to see what, because this plant was really beautiful and healthy just a couple days ago. It's very upsetting. I have Thai basil growing on a bunch of spots because it's just gorgeous, and the pollinators dig it. This is fenugreek, and I'm really looking forward to the beautiful flowers that it makes and maybe eating some of the seeds and leaves. I'm not really sure, but I had fenugreek seeds because I like to eat them, and looks like this is a seed pod, so I don't know what's going on. It's a very cool plant, and it sprouts very vigorously, so I was like, you're going in the ground. Let's see what you do. I have some onions out here, which hopefully will at least grow some flowers. This is just a cress. It was a cress for, sprouting cress for eating as microgreens, and I've just let it go to seed and flower again because I want flowers. And there was a time in my yard when I could not get any flowers, and it was breaking my heart. Out here, speaking of flowers, this is supposed to be that is a beautiful dragonfly. Can you guys see that? Oh my God. Oh, it flew away. Oh, the dragonfly is the same color blue as, I can't find it in the screen finder. Oh my God. What a gift. What a gift. My battery's gonna die, but I just have to take this moment. Oh my God. That dragonfly was on this flower. It was like the matching dragonfly to the flower. That was so cool. Okay, sorry, a lot of zoom going on. So back here is supposed to be my flower bed. It's had some changes. Originally there was a huge behemoth of catnip, Nepentha, which my pollinators was the saving grace for them for the longest time. So I'm really grateful for that plant. She's under there now. She's going to come back, but she needed to be cut back. She was really ready and tired and ready to be cut back. In the meantime, this crazy malva has shot up out of nowhere. I definitely think I planted this malva, but I don't remember doing so. And I'm just happy to see it has flowers. I took off a big side branch that was encroaching on my chives, which were quite the struggle to get to grow enough to transplant into that pot. So I was like, no, we're going to protect those. So I did take off that branch, and it doesn't look like it's going to really harm this plant. She looks like she is, oops, sorry, you're in super zoom. She looks super tough, so we're happy about that. Here's a sunflower that looks happy. Oh, and there's some sunflowers that look reasonably happy. I've had really happy sunflowers, and I've been spoiled by them, but right now I don't have that many. Because it's been a while and I should have made the video sooner. So speaking of sunflowers, some funny stories here. This one you can see is face planted. I'm sorry, sunflower, I'm not trying to mock you in my video, but poor thing, it was face planted because of the crazy sea serpent of squash vines that keep falling off their makeshift trellis. Speaking of which, I need to remind myself to cut the trellis, cut the tendrils from the squash vine before it tries to uproot the malva, which it's already doing. I think you can see the little spiral right there. And it went after my 4 o'clocks, which I transplanted back here, and I'm really excited to see them flower. Again, I think my hummingbirds are going to love another sort of trumpet flower. They go nuts over this old flowering tree shrub thing. I forgot what those are called. I want to say columbines, but I don't know if that's right. I've done as much as I can to sort of bring that tree back to life, and I'm really excited it has more growth because, like I said, it keeps the hummers happy, and I'm hoping that they're going to enjoy my 4 o'clocks. Here is the beautiful perigon, the Mexican tarragon that smells and tastes so good, and I just can't even get over how beautiful those flowers are. And speaking of beautiful flowers, I finally have zinnias, guys. This is amazing. I have to tell the whole story, but not in this video because we're already at an hour. But I'm really, the color of these doesn't even show up well in the viewfinder. I'm excited to see some side growth as well. It's not hot enough, so they're zinnias. They would really appreciate like 20 more degrees. But I'm just so grateful for them, for their bloom, because it's been a long time coming. I've planted like 4 rounds to get them to grow, and I could not be happier to see them shining their happy faces. Maybe even another one. Maybe. There's been the zinnias are a funny story in my yard. I will tell you more soon. Here is that magenta version of this name flower I can't remember the name of. It's just gorgeous. I love it. I love how it has this like desert look to it. It's just such a cool flower. And then speaking of other things that are beautiful, this is ornamental but also edible Chinese amaranth, and I just love it. Just love it. It's growing really beautifully here. I come out and I thin some of these smaller ones to sort of make more nutritional space for this as it goes, but I'm enjoying eating it. It's got a decent taste for leafy greens, but it's just really fun that it's an edible that's also so beautiful. And I need to get rid of that blackberry vine, which is totally just trying to smash my flowers. So always work to do. Where do we need to go, guys? I think we've done a whirlwind tour here to try and get through this as quickly as possible, but we got to talk about the tomatoes really quickly. And this is the final, I'm calling these the class of 2020 because these were the teeniest little seedlings when they came up. It took them so long to sprout, I didn't even know what they were. And when I realized they were coming out from the chunks of tomato I threw in the ground, I just honestly transplanted them to practice transplanting. So the fact that they are now at the stage where most of them have flowers and most of them have a lot of flowers. they don't have that much fruit, and they might never get that much fruit because it just hasn't been hot enough. We've literally had, since they've been at flowering size, we've had a storm that knocked some of them over, and they've really been pretty beat up. But aside from that, they're such gorgeous, healthy plants. Like, I'm just delighted with the health of these plants. Most of them, all but maybe like 4 or 5 of these plants are from the same fruit that I told you I threw in the ground. I have some that I started from seeds that I will show you as they develop. I'll do a separate video just on tomatoes. But in the meantime, I might need some recipes for how to prepare green tomatoes because they might just never ripen because it's not warm enough for them, which really makes me sad. But here we are. It's almost September. Yeah, we could get quote unquote San Francisco Indian summer, late summer. I don't know why they call it that, but they do. And, you know, maybe they'll be our last run and it'll ripen, or maybe they can ripen in 60-degree weather. I don't know, but I hope so because I've just kept transplanting them because they kept growing so beautifully. So this has been this crazy out of control experiment, having never grown a single tomato to now have 30-something in my garden. Final thing I just want to show you, and I want to, besides all the different tomatillos, what did I tell you? I just have tomatillos everywhere. Is behind here, well, the blackberry trellis. These are wild blackberries that have been here for decades. So I built this really awesome trellis for them. They're actually looking kind of sad. I'm not sure what's going on with them right now. Yeah, it's a little strange. Those branches look like they're drying out or something. I don't know what's going on. But it has a lot of fruit on it, and it has produced a lot of fruit. And at least it's tame because that plant is a monster, and it can be pretty vicious. So there's that, and I have more chili plants back there. But other than that, guys, all right, there's our speaking tour, whirlwind speaking tour. I have more things we'll talk about. We'll have a whole video series on the compost. I just turned it yesterday, and that's those squash leaves I told you about on top. That's most everything. Everything else I'm going to have to give you a little more detail about. But there's the overview documenting my first garden in San Francisco, in the Richmond district, the fog belt of San Francisco. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has been inspiring. I hope this helps you show, like, oh, under there I've got parsley. Didn't even cross the bridge. Real fast. This whole squash is a video in itself, but that's a squash from Soto. It's supposed to be like a winter squash variety. It has created tons of flowers, but only very few female flowers. It has squash on it, but only 2 have made it. And I think it's because it doesn't get enough sun. It gets enough sun to grow like crazy, but not enough sun to really cook up squash. So I'm just letting this plant go nuts because it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's a total monster, but I love it. And I'm hoping to work it over towards the blackberry trellis, so that they can fight it out. But yeah, otherwise it's just been hilarious to watch it grow out of control. Like I said, it smashed my poor sunflower, but the sunflower was pretty much dead before it did that. So I'm not blaming the squash. Under here I have more parsley, which you can see grows better in the shade and less direct sun. They say that cilantro prefers shade and that parsley wants sun. How did this flower get knocked over? That's sad to me. But I've found in my garden that the parsley really prefers shade, and it grows really well in some shade. So I got to come and get this flower out of here, and I got to pull some of this back because this vine is starting to go nuts. It's starting to come out this direction, which is no good because I'm not going to let it take on this part of my garden. But we'll see. I'll cross that bridge when it gets to here, which is like tomorrow. More orange. I've got all kinds of clover growing as ground cover underneath here because at one point before the squash was gone crazy, I had a really hard time with this soil just becoming totally sterile and really hard to keep healthy. Something is eating my purslane, which is weird, but I wanted to show you I have purslane, which is seeding up a bit. I don't remember seeing flowers. I was hoping I would see flowers, but I'm growing for the omega-3s, and once the squash is out of here and the space is a little bit happier, I will be back here harvesting more of it. I was really just seeing how its growth pattern was. Maybe if I trim it back, it'll bush out more as well. Interesting. And of course the squash is totally grabbing on it. Maybe it's the squash that decapitated it. I also have some other flowers in here, but you can see it's a mess. We're at a mess. All right. So, moral of the story: it's been an amazing educational journey, and so many different kinds of sunflowers, so many experiments, and I'm really looking forward to sharing all of my learning with you guys. But I had to give you the big picture first. And now I'll flesh out the details in future videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing your garden experiences with me below.